Every collapsed civilization in human history, Rome, the Maya, the Soviet Union, didn't fall because people became weak in body. They fell because people became weak in truth. They chose comfortable lies over uncomfortable reality. They chose short-term relief over long-term survival. They chose the soothing voice that told them what they wanted to hear over the harsh voice that told them what they needed to know. And right now, in this moment, you're making the same choice, multiple times a day, and it's creating the hard times you're living through. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and in the comments, I want you to answer one question. What truth are you avoiding right now? Just name it. One thing. You don't have to explain it. Just name it. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't comfortable, but it might be the most important thing you hear this year. You're watching the world fall apart and you feel powerless to stop it. The economy feels like it's barely holding together. Politics has turned into tribal warfare where everyone's screaming and nobody's listening. Relationships are more fragile than they've ever been. Communities are disintegrating. And everywhere you look, people are pointing fingers, blaming the other side, blaming the system, blaming the elites, blaming the idiots who voted wrong. But deep down, you suspect something else is going on, something nobody's naming. You sense that the chaos isn't just out there in the world. It's internal. It's in you, in your relationships, in the choices you make every single day. And you're tired of the oversimplified explanations. You're tired of being told that hard times are created by lazy people or evil people or stupid people. Because you've seen lazy people who don't create chaos. You've seen hardworking people who do. You've seen intelligent people make catastrophically stupid decisions. And you started to wonder, what if the problem isn't who people are, but how they relate to discomfort? What if the weakness that creates hard times isn't about strength of character, but strength of honesty? You've heard that quote your entire life. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. And it sounds true. It feels true. But it's wrong. Or at least it's incomplete in a way that makes it dangerous. Because it makes you think weakness is about being soft, lazy, undisciplined, or cowardly. It makes you think the solution is just working harder, being tougher, developing more grit. But that's not it. I've known men who could endure unbelievable physical hardship. Soldiers, athletes, construction workers, who created absolute chaos in their personal lives because they couldn't sit with emotional discomfort. I've known women who survived poverty, abuse, war, externally strong, who destroyed their families because they couldn't tolerate feeling their own pain, so they numbed it, denied it, projected it on everyone around them. The weakness that creates hard times isn't physical or even moral. It's psychological. It's the inability to tolerate what's real. Let me be very specific. There are 3 forms of weakness that create the hardest times. And I guarantee you're going to recognize yourself in at least one of them. Maybe all 3. And that recognition is going to be uncomfortable. But that discomfort, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of strength. The first form of weakness is avoidance. You know something is wrong. In your relationship, your health, your finances, your community. But you don't want to deal with it. So you distract yourself. You numb yourself. You tell yourself it'll work itself out. You kick the can down the road. And what could have been a small problem becomes a catastrophic one. This is the weakness that destroyed Rome. Not barbarians at the gates. The refusal to face what was happening inside the empire until it was too late. Think about your own life right now. You know your marriage isn't working. You can feel it. The distance. The resentment building. But you don't bring it up because the conversation will be uncomfortable. You'll have to feel vulnerable. You'll have to admit you're struggling. You'll have to risk conflict. So you avoid. And every day you avoid, the distance grows. And you tell yourself you're being patient, being mature, picking your battles. But you're not. You're being weak. And that weakness is creating the hardest time your marriage will ever face. Or think about the 2008 financial crisis. Everyone in the banking industry knew housing prices couldn't keep rising forever. Everyone knew people were getting loans they couldn't afford. Everyone knew the system was built on delusion. But nobody wanted to be the one to say it. Nobody wanted to stop the party. Nobody wanted to feel the discomfort of admitting the truth and dealing with the consequences. So they avoided. And millions of people lost their homes, their savings, their futures. That wasn't created by lazy people. It was created by people who couldn't tolerate being uncomfortable with what they knew was true. The second form of weakness is comfort seeking. You prioritize feeling good over being good. You prioritize short-term relief over long-term integrity. Every single day, you make 1,000 small choices, and most of them are about avoiding discomfort. You eat the junk food instead of cooking something healthy, because cooking requires effort and patience. You scroll social media instead of calling your friend who's going through a hard time, because that conversation would be heavy. You watch another episode of the show you've already seen 3 times instead of doing the work you know needs to be done, because work is uncomfortable and Netflix is easy. Each choice feels harmless. Each choice feels like a small thing. But these small choices compound. And eventually you wake up in a life you don't recognize, wondering how you got here. And the answer is simple. 1,000 small choices to be comfortable instead of truthful. To feel good instead of be good. To avoid what's necessary because what's necessary doesn't feel nice. And here's what's insidious about this. Our culture has rebranded comfort-seeking as self-care. As if choosing the easy thing is somehow an act of wisdom. As if avoiding responsibility is spiritual. Let me be clear. Rest is not weakness. Rest replenishes you for what needs to be done. But avoidance? Avoidance protects you from what needs to be felt. Rest is strategic. Avoidance is cowardice with better marketing. The third form of weakness, and this is the most dangerous because it's invisible to the person doing it, is self-deception. You lie to yourself about your motives, your impact, your responsibility. You tell yourself you're a good person while doing harmful things. You tell yourself you're strong while avoiding everything that challenges you. You tell yourself you're right while never questioning your beliefs. This is the weakness that has destroyed more relationships, companies, and civilizations than any external enemy ever could. You construct a narrative where you're always right, where you're always the victim or the hero, where your intentions are pure, and anyone who disagrees with you is either stupid or evil. And any evidence that contradicts this narrative, you dismiss it, you rationalize it, you surround yourself with people who confirm your story. And you become incapable of learning, growing, changing. You become a closed system. And closed systems always collapse. Let me tell you about a man I knew. Successful businessman. Built a company from nothing. Everyone called him strong, resilient, a self-made man. And in many ways, he was. He could work 18-hour days. Handle stress that would break most people. Never complained, never quit. But he had a daughter. And that daughter needed something he couldn't give her, emotional presence. She needed him to stop, to feel, to be vulnerable, to admit when he was overwhelmed or scared or didn't have the answers. But he couldn't, because in his mind, strength meant never showing weakness. Strength meant always having it together. So when she came to him with her struggles, depression, anxiety, confusion about who she was and what her life meant, he gave her the same advice he gave his employees. Work harder. Push through. Don't be weak. Don't let your feelings control you. She died by suicide at 22. And in the aftermath, this man, this strong man, completely fell apart. Not because he was weak, but because he finally had to confront the truth he'd been avoiding his whole life. His strength was a performance. His refusal to be vulnerable wasn't discipline. It was fear. Fear of feeling. Fear of being seen as less than perfect. Fear of admitting he didn't have all the answers. And his fear of discomfort created the hardest time of his life and ended hers. That's what I mean when I say weak people create hard times. He wasn't weak in the way you think. He was weak in his ability to tolerate emotional truth. And that weakness had devastating consequences. And the tragedy is he's not unique. This is happening everywhere. In every relationship. Every family, every community, people performing strength while avoiding the one thing that would actually make them strong, honest confrontation with what's real. So how do you know if you're one of the weak people creating hard times? Let me give you a test. Can you admit when you're scared? Can you acknowledge when you're wrong? Can you feel your pain without numbing it with food, or alcohol, or work, or Netflix, or scrolling? Can you be present with someone else's pain without trying to fix it, or minimize it, or make it go away? Can you question your own beliefs? Can you tolerate being disliked for telling the truth? If the answer to any of these is no, you're performing strength. And that performance is creating hard times for you and for everyone around you. Now here's where this gets really uncomfortable, because I need to tell you what real strength actually is. And it's not what you think. Our culture has completely confused strength with performance. We celebrate the person who never cries, never struggles, never doubts. We celebrate the person who's always productive, always confident, always in control. But all of that, that's not strength. That's avoidance dressed up to look impressive. Real strength is the ability to sit with discomfort without numbing it. You can feel your anxiety without reaching for a drink. You can feel your grief without distracting yourself with work. You can feel your shame without defending yourself or attacking someone else. This isn't passive suffering. This is active presence. This is saying, I'm going to feel this fully, let it move through me, and not let it control my actions. Real strength is the ability to see yourself accurately. You can admit when you're wrong. You can recognize your own hypocrisy. You can face your own selfishness, your own cruelty, your own limitations. And this doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. And honesty is the foundation of all real strength. Real strength is the ability to choose long-term truth over short-term comfort. You have the hard conversation now instead of avoiding it until it explodes later. You do the difficult work instead of finding easier distractions. You face your responsibility instead of blaming your circumstances. You feel the pain of growth instead of the numbness of stagnation. And here's the paradox. The people who appear strongest, who never cry, never struggle, never doubt, are often running from something. Real strength often looks vulnerable because it doesn't need to prove itself. Think about the people you actually respect, not the people you're impressed by. The people you respect, they're usually the ones who can say, I don't know. I was wrong. I'm struggling. I need help. That's strength. Everything else is performance. So how do you move from performed strength to real strength? How do you stop being one of the weak people creating hard times? It's not complicated, but it is uncomfortable. And that's why most people won't do it. First, you have to recognize your specific weakness. Stop generalizing. Don't just say, I need to be better or I'm weak. Get brutally specific. I avoid conflict because I'm terrified of being disliked. I seek comfort because I can't tolerate the emptiness I feel when I'm alone with myself. I deceive myself about my motives because I can't tolerate the shame of admitting I'm selfish. That level of honesty is where change begins. And most people can't do it because it hurts. Second, you have to feel what you've been avoiding. Don't fix it yet. Don't strategize around it. Just feel it. The grief, the fear, the shame, the anger. Let it move through you without acting on it. Because every weakness is a frozen feeling. You avoid the conflict because you can't tolerate the fear. You seek comfort because you can't tolerate the emptiness. You deceive yourself because you can't tolerate the shame. Until you can feel these things without being destroyed by them, you can't change. Third, you have to make the uncomfortable choice. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Do the work you've been putting off. Admit the truth you've been denying. Not because it feels good, because it's necessary. And your entire nervous system will resist this. Your brain will generate 1,000 reasons why now isn't the right time. Why you need to prepare more. Why it would be irresponsible to act. This is the weakness trying to preserve itself. Act anyway. And fourth, you have to repeat this until it becomes your nature. This isn't one and done. This is a practice. Every day, multiple times a day, you choose truth over comfort, discomfort over avoidance, honesty over performance. Your partner does something that bothers you. Instead of letting it build into resentment, you bring it up immediately, even though it's awkward. You're scrolling your phone to avoid feeling lonely. You notice the avoidance. You put the phone down, and you sit with the loneliness until it reveals what it's trying to tell you. You're about to blame your circumstances for your problems. You catch yourself and ask, What's my responsibility here? What did I avoid? What did I choose? This will not make you comfortable. This will make you capable. Capable of facing reality. Capable of building something real. Capable of creating good times instead of hard ones. But the price is you have to feel everything you've been avoiding. And for most people, that feels like dying. It's not. It's awakening. But it doesn't feel that way at first. Weak people create hard times not because they're bad, but because they're terrified. Terrified of pain. Terrified of truth. Terrified of being wrong. Terrified of being disliked. Terrified of feeling what they feel. And that terror makes them choose comfort over reality. And reality, when ignored, always returns as catastrophe. Always. In your relationships. In your health. In your finances. In your community. In your country. Strong people create good times not because they're special, but because they're willing. Willing to feel discomfort. Willing to face truth. Willing to be wrong and change. Willing to be unpopular for being honest. And that willingness creates trust, stability, growth, the foundations of every good time in human history. Every renaissance. Every golden age. Every period of flourishing. Built by people who were willing to face what was real instead of what was comfortable. You don't need to be smarter. You don't need to be tougher. You don't need to work harder. You need to be more honest. With yourself. With others. With what's actually happening. That's the strength that creates good times. Everything else is performance. And performance always collapses under pressure. You came here thinking weak people create hard times because they're lazy or undisciplined or cowardly. But now you see it differently, don't you? The weakness that destroys everything isn't about capability. It's about honesty. It's about the willingness to feel what's uncomfortable, to see what's true, and to act from that truth even when it costs you something. You've seen the three forms of weakness: avoidance, comfort-seeking, self-deception. And if you're honest, you recognize yourself in at least one of them. Maybe all three. That recognition, that discomfort you're feeling right now, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of strength. You're not weak because you struggle. You're weak when you pretend you don't. You're not weak because you feel pain. You're weak when you numb it, avoid it, or project it onto others. You're not weak because you make mistakes. You're weak when you can't admit them. Real strength isn't the absence of discomfort. It's the willingness to be uncomfortable with the truth. And that willingness, that's what creates good times. Not for you alone, but for everyone your life touches. Stop performing strength. Start practicing honesty. The hard times you're living through, they were created by people who couldn't do this. The good times you're capable of creating, they start the moment you can. If this perspective challenged you, if it made you uncomfortable in a way that feels important, I'd love to know. Leave a comment sharing which of the three weaknesses you recognize in yourself. Not to shame yourself, to name it, because naming it is the first act of strength. If this video shifted how you think about weakness and strength, a like helps others who need this message find it. And if you want more philosophy that doesn't comfort you, but transforms you, subscribe. Not because I have all the answers, but because asking the hard questions together is how we create the good times we all deserve. You're not weak for struggling. You're weak for pretending. Stop pretending. Start building.